Hi, this is Richard Fields with this week's Report from the Fields. There are three primary ways to get what you want in this world: luck, politics, and work. Luck, by definition, is something we have no control over. That leaves politics and work. Politics can mean anything from brown-nosing the boss to denigrating your coworkers behind their backs to using government to get something for nothing. Brown-nosers and gossips usually end up as losers in the long run. But working the political system to benefit from the efforts of others has been going on forever and will probably never end. Politics is a win-lose game. In general, working taxpayers get stiffed, and whoever gets something from the government wins at the taxpayer's expense. Win-lose. Corporate welfare, or as it's politely called, industrial policy, is a big winner. Think the portion of the healthcare industry that's funded by government, a big chunk of the defense industry, and the education business. Ordinary welfare recipients, government workers who don't actually produce anything anyone wants, and regulators who just get in the way of commerce. You get the picture. Not really an honorable way to live. That leaves working for a living, producing goods and services that people actually want to buy voluntarily, the win-win part of the economy. The private sector in macroeconomic terms. Generally speaking, the larger the portion of the economy controlled by politics, the poorer people are in general. Think the USSR, Venezuela, Zimbabwe, and other countries throughout history where almost everything is controlled by the government, that is, politically. Compare that to the United States and Western Europe, where until the 1970s or so, governments were relatively small and the private sector was much larger in comparison. Incomes increased for rich and poor alike. Scientific discovery boomed. The trajectory of history favors win-win, an economy based on freely trading with each other rather than stealing from each other. An illustrative story demonstrating that sweep of progress is the story of the supersonic transport, the SST. The first SST that carried passengers was the Concorde. It was a joint venture between a French and English company and started carrying passengers for Air France and British Airways in 1976. It flew at 1,354 miles per hour and crossed the Atlantic in 3.5 hours. Unfortunately, politics got in the way. Overland flights in the United States were banned because they caused sonic booms. Fair enough, but the heavy hand of politics banned flights at supersonic speed, not the booms themselves. Nevertheless, research on supersonic aviation was stymied for almost 50 years. But the human desire to have breakfast in New York and arrive in Paris in time for lunch never went away. Several private sector startup companies are working on reviving SSTs. The largest and best known is Boom Supersonic. Boom's Overture would fly at subsonic speeds over land and use sustainable aviation fuels to achieve net zero carbon emissions. It already has pre-orders from United, American, and Japan Airlines. Another more speculative contender is Astro Mechanica. Astro is designing an engine that would have 3 different modes of operation: a fuel-sipping turbofan for takeoff and landing, a ramjet for supersonic, and get this, a rocket to go hypersonic, 5 times the speed of sound. It would burn liquid natural gas instead of kerosene, reducing the cost of fuel by a factor of 10. Astro's developers think they can make it all happen with ticket prices comparable to Southwest. Leave Los Angeles at 10 in the morning and get to New York at 9 a.m. Time travel. I'm on board. You see, people acting voluntarily in the win-win economy will always prevail in the long run because they provide things people actually want. Politicians can slow people down by more than 50 years in the case of supersonic travel, but they cannot stop the trajectory of history. I'm Richard Fields, and that's this week's Report from the Fields. See you again next week.